The park was nearly deserted that late afternoon, except for the shrill, heart-piercing cries of a baby that echoed across the empty playground. People walking by stole uneasy glances but quickened their steps, unwilling to involve themselves in what looked like trouble. The child, no more than a year old, sat bundled in a luxurious silk blanket inside a designer stroller positioned near the fountain. His tiny fists waved helplessly in the air, his face blotchy and red from the strain of endless crying. On a worn bench a few feet away sat Evelyn, a woman wrapped in a tattered coat, her hair unkempt, her eyes tired yet still sharp. Once, she had been a schoolteacher with dreams and dignity, but after losing her husband in an accident and drowning in hospital debts, she had slipped into homelessness. She had learned to go unnoticed, to fade into the background of the city's indifference. Yet, as she watched the baby's chest heave with sobs, something stirred in her heart that she hadn't felt in years, the aching pull of maternal instinct. She hesitated, fear clashing with compassion. What if someone accused her of kidnapping? What if security or police dragged her away simply for touching a child who wasn't hers? Still, the cries grew more desperate, slicing through her doubts until she could no longer sit still. With trembling hands, she rose and leaned over the stroller, whispering softly, "It's okay, little one, you're not alone." Carefully, she lifted the infant into her arms, his small body warm and fragile against her chest. Almost instantly, the baby's sobs quieted, replaced with hiccups and a tentative grip on her torn sleeve. Evelyn rocked him gently, swaying with the rhythm of a lullaby she hadn't sung since her own daughter was small. For the first time in years, she felt needed, her heart flooding with an unfamiliar warmth. She didn't know that eyes were already watching her, not just the curious glances of strangers but cameras hidden in the park, recording every second. She also didn't know that this baby wasn't just any child but the son of Adrian Blackwell, one of the wealthiest and most powerful men in the city. And in picking him up, she had unknowingly stepped into a world that would soon change her life forever. Adrian Blackwell had built his empire on precision and control. Every detail of his life was scheduled, every deal calculated, every risk managed, but nothing could have prepared him for the phone call that shattered his composure. In the middle of a high-stakes board meeting, his assistant whispered urgently in his ear, and Adrian's world froze. His infant son, Daniel, had been left unattended in the park after his nanny collapsed from a sudden fainting spell. By the time help arrived, the stroller was empty. Panic surged through him like wildfire, burning away his carefully constructed exterior. He rushed from the skyscraper without a word to his board, his only thought consumed by his child's safety. At the hospital, he found the nanny unconscious but stable, doctors assuring him she would recover. Yet their words barely registered, for his son was still missing. Security footage only deepened the knot in his chest. A homeless woman had been seen lifting Daniel from the stroller and walking away. Fury and fear tangled violently inside him. His mind painted images of ransom notes, news scandals, and headlines about a billionaire unable to protect his only son. He barked orders at his security team to scour every street, every alley, every shelter, sparing no resource in the search. Yet when additional footage came in, Adrian found himself momentarily disarmed. The woman wasn't running away, she was sitting beneath the trees, holding Daniel in her arms with a tenderness that struck him unexpectedly. She cradled the baby close, rocking him, whispering words no camera could capture, while his cries subsided into calm. For a man who had everything, Adrian suddenly realized how powerless he was. His money couldn't silence his son's tears, but a woman who had nothing had done it effortlessly. His jaw clenched as conflicting emotions stormed inside him. Was she a kidnapper playing a cruel trick, or had she truly rescued his child from hours of terror and neglect? Determined to see for himself, Adrian gave a single command: "Bring her to me, now." He didn't know that the meeting about to unfold would not only decide the fate of his son but also shake the very foundation of the world he thought he controlled. Evelyn sat on a quiet patch of grass at the far end of the park, Daniel nestled in her arms as she hummed softly, her voice shaky yet soothing. She had spent her last few coins on a bottle of milk from a nearby vendor, and the baby suckled eagerly, his cries replaced by soft coos. For a fleeting moment, Evelyn felt almost whole again, as if the crushing weight of her circumstances had lifted. But the illusion shattered when the rumble of engines broke the silence. Black SUVs screeched to a stop, and a swarm of men in dark suits surged toward her, their expressions sharp and intimidating. Startled, Evelyn's first instinct was fear, and she clutched Daniel closer, her heart racing as if she had been caught committing a crime. Then, through the wall of security, a tall, commanding figure pushed forward, Adrian Blackwell, his presence radiating authority and desperation. Their eyes locked, his blazing with suspicion and protectiveness, hers shimmering with a mix of defiance and sorrow. "Give me my son," he demanded, his voice low but edged with steel. Evelyn rose to her feet slowly, her arms trembling, not from reluctance but from the enormity of the moment. She extended the baby toward him, yet the second Daniel was in his father's arms, the infant burst into fresh sobs, stretching his tiny hands back toward Evelyn. The sight startled Adrian, cutting through his fury like a blade. For a moment, he saw not a homeless stranger but the only person who had managed to comfort his child. The tension thickened, his men ready to intervene, but Adrian lifted a hand to halt them, his sharp gaze still fixed on Evelyn. "Why?" he asked finally, his voice softer now, curiosity seeping into his suspicion. Evelyn swallowed hard, her throat dry, and whispered, "Because he needed someone, and I couldn't turn away." The simplicity of her words struck him more deeply than he expected. In that instant, two worlds collided, the billionaire who believed money solved everything and the woman who had nothing yet gave everything she had. The park around them seemed to fade, leaving only a fragile moment suspended between accusation and understanding, one that would change both their lives forever. The hours after the confrontation in the park blurred into a haze of questions, explanations, and hesitant trust. Adrian had taken Daniel back into his arms, yet the image of the baby reaching out for Evelyn lingered in his mind like an echo he couldn't ignore. Instead of having her arrested as his instincts first commanded, he ordered his men to stand down and insisted on hearing her story. Evelyn, still shaken, told him in halting words about losing her husband in a car accident, the mountain of medical bills that swallowed her home and her career, and the slow descent into homelessness. Her voice cracked as she admitted she hadn't touched a baby in years, not since her own daughter had been taken into foster care when she could no longer provide. Adrian, a man hardened by boardrooms and billion-dollar deals, found himself uncomfortably moved by the raw honesty in her confession. He realized she hadn't taken his child out of malice, she had given him comfort in a moment when no one else dared. In the days that followed, Adrian arranged discreet meetings with Evelyn, under the guise of thanking her, though deep down he was searching for answers he couldn't quite name. Each time, Daniel lit up at the sight of her, calming instantly in her arms, and Adrian began to see something he had overlooked: love was not bought with wealth, it was given freely. Slowly, his walls began to crack, and he asked her to stay, not as a stranger, but as Daniel's caregiver. At first, Evelyn resisted, ashamed of her rags and her past, but Adrian pressed, offering her shelter, dignity, and a chance to start again. One evening, as she tucked Daniel into his crib, Evelyn turned and found Adrian watching quietly from the doorway, his eyes no longer cold with suspicion but softened with gratitude. "You saved him," he murmured. Evelyn shook her head, smiling faintly. "He saved me." What had begun with a desperate cry in the park had blossomed into something neither of them had expected, a bond that bridged two broken souls, one who had everything yet felt empty, and one who had nothing but gave all she had. And in that fragile space between them, both found the hope of a new beginning.